What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to bring you guys my team selection / ultimate guide for the upcoming Game Week 18. These past couple game weeks, due to the quick turnaround between the game weeks, I've kind of combined the ultimate guide and the team selection, but this video is going to be slightly different. In the team selection portion of the video, the game week review of Game Week 17, seeing how my team did, the transfer plans, the upcoming game week team selection Game Week 18, those portions are going to be super quick because I don't want to waste your guys' time. And the reason for that, as you know, with all these postponements, I don't think there's any insight that we can gain from reflecting on Game Week 17 and taking that information into Game Week 18, because not every team has a fair fixture. So I just think it's a little bit of a waste of time to spend 20 minutes talking about my own team and all the possibilities, and I don't really want to be that content creator. So those portions of the video will be super quick, but then moving on to the ultimate guide, where I talk about should you guys free it depending on the amount of players you have, what fixtures are on, what captaincy fixtures are potentially there. I think those are more insightful, and therefore I'll spend more time on that as I think there's more value to be gained. So that's something you guys are interested in. Sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. But first, a word from our sponsor. This video has been sponsored by fantasyfootballfix.com. Use the website or their newly updated application. Make use of their price predictor tool to check your own players' prices as well as who's dropping and rising in price. Improve your rank by making use of their advanced tools as well as the algorithm, which helps back up your own FPL decisions. Win your mini leagues by keeping track of your main mini league rivals. Upload your FPL squad for free at fantasyfootballfix.com. So quickly going over the Game Week 17 team review, pretty good game week for us actually. We kind of halved our rank and are currently sitting just below the top 100k. So the second time or third time this season that we have been within the top 100k. So really excited about that, and we have almost profited off chaos a little bit because, as you guys know, Game Week 17, a lot of fixtures were postponed. The Watford-Burnley game, if I do recall, sorry if that game is correct, but I know it was the Watford game, that was called off about an hour before the kickoff, which is absolutely mental. You guys can't prepare for that, and as I said, FPL at the current moment is purely luck. But we managed to get 83 points with a -4 taking us to a nice 79 points total, a relatively high rank. I think about the 30k game week rank we did have for Game Week 17, so exceptionally high. And the reason for that was that in that -4 transfer, we took out Ronaldo and also Mbumo, and we brought in Phil Foden and Ollie Watkins. So both of those two players returning a lovely 12 points. So the net gain on that was pretty high. Unfortunately, if you guys look at my bench, Smith Rowe was placed there with 6 points. And I just want to go over my thinking behind that because this might be relevant for your guys' thinking for these upcoming game weeks. The reason why I benched Smith Rowe for this upcoming game week was that I was expecting him to be benched. Yes, he was actually benched, and my thinking for that was correct, but I just thought that I would rather take a 90-minute Douglas Luiz against the Norwich side that have been pretty bad this season than Smith Rowe coming off the bench against a West Ham who have actually been quite solidly secure. Now, my thinking might have actually been a little bit false today because I don't think Smith Rowe would have come off the bench if he wasn't needed. Now, he was brought on at about 1-0, so Arsenal didn't necessarily need him, but they still needed a goal, I guess, and therefore bringing Smith Rowe on was still profitable. So that was a risk at the end of the day, but it didn't really pay off, but luckily only 3 points came about it. Douglas Luiz picking up that extra clean sheet point, Smith Rowe getting a goal but not the clean sheet and the extra 60-minute appearance point. In terms of the rest of the team, a relatively solid. I think every one of my players managed to return except for Antonio. Yet again, only 2-point appearances, but at this stage of the season, as long as West Ham have games, I'm going to be keeping Antonio in my squad. Ben White also outperforming Ramsdale, pretty happy with that. As long as he can outperform Ramsdale, I'm perfectly fine because he's already owned by a lot of managers in the top 10k, top 100k, so I almost have to cover that Arsenal clean sheet every single game week. The only other factor to take into account for Game Week 17 is that we did not have a goalkeeper, and the reason why I didn't take a -4 transfer to either take out Ben Foster or David De Gea, even though I knew they didn't have fixtures, was that I was hoping that United's fixture against Brighton would still remain in Game Week 18. Now we know that that's not the case. A little bit unfortunate there. If I did bring in Ramsdale, as I probably would have been 1 point net gained off that -4, and going into Game Week 18 would have also been fine with that. So that's going to be the Game Week 7 team review, guys. If you guys want me to go into more in depth, just drop it in the comments down below. Any questions you want me to add, and I will probably give you my insight into those specific talking points. Otherwise, if you have any other talking points throughout the video, drop them in the comments down below. I try to reply to everyone's comment as I usually am able to do. Okay, but now going on to the Game Week 18 team selection, and I wanted to talk about this before I talk about my transfers, just because it gives you some context, some background into my current starting 11. So yes, we actually do have a starting 10, one player on the bench there with Douglas Luiz, but unfortunately, yet again, we don't have a goalkeeper. So Dayvy De Gea against Brighton was postponed yet again. Now it might take place in the midweek next week, but that's all speculation at the moment, and we have to prepare with what's in front of us, and what's in front of us is that we don't have a goalkeeper. But in terms of the rest of the starting 11, they look quite solid. I'm expecting Smith Rowe to come back into the starting 11 for Arsenal after his goal from the subs bench. Here's a nice fixture against Leeds, which could be quite profitable. Ollie Watkins against Burnley, our new player brought in. We also do have Douglas Luiz, but now that Smith Rowe should be back in the starting 11, I don't think there's any reason to kind of go for the 4.5 midfielder. In terms of the rest of the defense, we've got three teams: Man City versus Newcastle, Chelsea versus Wolves, and then also Spurs versus Liverpool. I am also forgetting Ben White there against Leeds, so that's actually 4 fixtures in our defense, and that continues into our forward line. Yet again, we have Man City, Liverpool, and Arsenal assets. Now, I'm going to talk about captaincy a little bit later on, but currently I do have it on Mo Salah, but that can always change, and I'll talk about all the talking points between who to put your vice captain on also later in the video in that talking point. So I am very lucky to actually have a starting 10. It might be a starting 11 depending on the transfer, but I think a lot of managers right now are struggling to get players in, and I'll address that later in the video when we talk about the free hit. So now that we've kind of looked at my starting 11 for Game Week 18, you can see that the only position I don't have a player in is going to be my goalkeeper position. So I do have Dayvy De Gea, and I also have Ben Foster, and I have about 2.5 in the banks. So upgrading either of those, downgrading either of those could be a reality, but it does seem like I might switch Ben Foster out rather than De Gea, just because De Gea should have a couple game weeks or double game weeks coming up in the near future. Now, the obvious transfer is going to be Arsenal's Ramsdale, but I think the fixtures might toughen up slightly. And if you do look at kind of Arsenal's calendar, they do have a blank game week coming up around that mid-game week 20 mark. So that's almost bringing in a player that I know is going to blank, but I obviously do have De Gea there to maybe cover him. But I also don't want to put kind of 10 million in my goalkeeper position, because that's quite a lot of value locked in there. And then adding to the benching headaches, I mean, having Ramsdale, De Gea, one has to play every single game week. I'm not going to bench boost every single game week. That's going to be an utter nightmare, and I'm probably going to have a lot of points on my bench. So I might actually look at taking Ben Foster out for a slightly cheaper goalkeeper. Now, the only problem is, if you guys look at the fixtures for the upcoming game week, there's no cheap goalkeepers at all. Not even a kind of Guaita from Crystal Palace at 4.6. So that's my other concern there. So I almost have to go for Ramsdale at this stage, and therefore I might take De Gea out for Ramsdale, to be honest. But I just don't know if that's a kind of move to do. I think the goalkeepers this week are super low value. I don't think it's going to be too many points between them. Now watch Ramsdale go out and get an 11-pointer. But I just think if I haven't made a transfer yet, I would rather just kind of bank it, and I might actually roll a transfer going into Game Week 18. So now that we've talked about my own team, I want to give you guys some feedback on kind of the general talking points of blank Game Week 18. I am calling it blank Game Week 18 because that's exactly what's happening. Only 5 fixtures at the moment going ahead. The others have all been postponed, and there might still be some postponements coming up throughout today and tomorrow. But as of recording this video, a late afternoon here in South Africa, probably mid-afternoon if you guys are based in the UK, these are the teams and the fixtures that are going ahead. So Villa take on Burnley, which is quite a favourable fixture from a Villa point of view. We also then have Leeds versus Arsenal, where I think because this is a home game and Leeds had a bad fixture against Man City, they'll look to rebound at this home fixture against Arsenal. And I am expecting Arsenal to actually concede here, and that's why I don't really want to go for the Ramsdale move as well. But from an attacking point of view, I think it's going to be an open game, lots of goals, and that's why I think Arsenal are also favourable from an attacking point of view. Wolves, Chelsea, I think this will be a super close game, similar to the Everton game, but less shots from a Chelsea point of view. So this game's quite hard to call, but I think from a defensive point of view, those Chelsea assets do look quite strong. Raul Jimenez returning to the starting 11 probably after his suspension, but I don't think that'll affect the Chelsea clean sheet, hopefully too much. But then obviously the 2 games that we're going to be focusing on, the first one, Man City versus Newcastle, where I think this game 100% will have the most goals in this weekend from one side, and that's going to be Man City. They're going to absolutely dominate Newcastle in my opinion, and that's how I would try and get as many Man City options that you guys can have as possible. And then Liverpool versus Spurs, which is quite hard to call. This game actually might be postponed. If I had to kind of predict a side to have another postponement, it's going to be Spurs, and therefore that Liverpool game might be under risk, but I still do think all of us own 3 Liverpool assets anyways, so might as well just stick with them and see how it goes. But absolutely mental blank game week here, half the fixtures absolutely wiped away. And are you guys considering using the free hit, or are you just going to stick with 6 or 7 players? And talking about the free hit, I wanted to give a shout out here to my friend Matty H FPL. You guys can go find him over on Twitter. He actually used the free hit in Game Week 17 because his squad was looking quite depleted. And look what happened here. He managed to absolutely rise in rank, 87.74% rise from about the 57k mark to all the way to the 7k mark. So absolutely mental there. If you guys look at the new pre-sub and new post-sub, you'll understand why getting Saiz and Jacob Ramsey off the bench for a combined 25 points is absolutely mental, and that took him to a massive bonus of 103 points in game week 17. Now, I consider the free hit in Game Week 17 to be quite a maverick strategy. Not many people are kind of going for it because everyone was in the same boat. Lots of managers were saying they don't want to kind of get that advantage, but look what can happen if you absolutely nail your free hit. Now, please don't expect to get 103 points on your free hit for Game Week 18. I think that Maddie will admit that he got a little bit lucky, especially with the benching. But I just wanted to show you here that you don't necessarily have to go for what people are saying, and you can go a little bit maverick, and usually if you do go maverick, it pays off. Now, this might be quite a bad habit for the free hit because I think everyone's going to kind of go in with false advertisement, thinking they're going to get a massive boost in Game Week 18. But that's not what I want to say here. I just want to show you that I wouldn't be completely against using the free hit, especially if your team's looking super depleted. And the reason why I'm saying that is that if you look at the teams that did well over Game Week 17, and Man City is a perfect example. If you guys don't own Man City assets, I think against Newcastle, they're going to absolutely bang. And therefore, if you don't have any Man City assets and you don't want to hit them in, I would definitely consider the free hit. But I would be very careful of it. I'm still on the side of kind of holding the free hit for later on in the season. I think it might be more of a profitable situation later on where you guys can kind of plan for it ahead. But the one thing I will say is that because of these postponements and we can't plan for them and your team's left in a disaster, I would definitely consider the free hit if your team's going to look a lot better in Game Week 19. As you know, with the free hit, you only get this team for one single game week, and that's probably the biggest caveat to this, is that if your team is looking absolutely terrible for Game Week 18 and in Game Week 19, you're going to get that Game Week 19 team back anyway, so you might as well take a couple hits, get those Man City players in for the long term, and then just sit tight and use the free hit a little bit later in the season. And that's why this chip's a super situational chip, unfortunately, but I would try as much as possible not to use it and try and use as many free transfers and hits to bring in quality players that won't mess up your team for the long term. But what you guys can do, because it's such a situational chip, you can comment your teams down below with how many players you have, options you might want to bring in on hits, and I would give you guys my honest feedback on if I would free it or if I won't. And finally, moving on to the captaincy, I know that we've kind of run through this video super fast, and I do apologize for that, but I don't want to waste your time when I know the deadline's coming up tomorrow. So first of all, going over my 3 favorite options for the upcoming Game Week 18 captaincy, I'm going to be obviously going for Mo Salah against Spurs. However, I don't necessarily think that he's the best option actually in Game Week 18. My favorite options to go for, you would have guessed that it's going to be the Man City assets versus Newcastle. The only problem I have with Man City is going to be that rotation, and under the new restrictions, we don't even know who's tested positive and who's tested negative, and therefore I would go with certainty, and the number one player to go for I think in that starting 11 is going to be Cancelo from a defensive department. Now, I never like to captain a defender, but I just think coming off that break against a Newcastle side, I think he's guaranteed to start with that 7 days of rest next week, and therefore the Portuguese international provides a nice little entry into a differential captain. Now, obviously, if you guys are going to predict who's going to start from an attacking point of view, I would go for them. I think anyone from Man City is going to get points this week, and you just have to predict who's going to score the most. Another little differential option that I would also be quite favorable for is going to be Ollie Watkins against Burnley. And the reason I'm saying that is that Aston Villa take on Burnley in the first game of Game Week 18, and therefore from a timing point of view, have the best security of that fixture actually going ahead. Now, talking about security of the fixture, I would recommend going for a vice captain from a Saturday fixture just because those Sunday fixtures prove to be quite unpredictable, and therefore those games might not actually go ahead. So Ollie Watkins is probably going to be the best vice captain to go for just because he is playing the first game of the game week, and therefore out of these 3, I think all of them will hopefully get points. It's just going to be who gets the most. And now finally, going on to the fantasyfootballfix.com's algorithm, kind of predicted points for the upcoming game week. These are the top 3 predicted point scorers for Game Week 18. The first one, Mo Salah, but the surprise of the game week is going to be Kevin De Bruyne. So those 2 players are super close. Not many times this FPL season that anyone's got close to Mo Salah on the predicted points, which just shows you what favorable of a fixture this Newcastle one is. Now, Kevin De Bruyne could obviously be any other kind of attack, I think, just because he's got some more minutes and because historically he's been the best Man City attacker to go for, his predicted points are slightly higher than a Foden, a Sterling, a Mahrez, and so on and so forth. But interestingly enough, Reece James has overtaken Marcos Alonso as the favorable kind of defender to go for from a Chelsea point of view. So 5.3 points predicted against Wolves. Now, I'm predicting quite a close game. I definitely think that Reece James and Alonso could get clean sheets. But as we saw yesterday against Everton, these 2 players have the potential for attacking returns as well. I mean, Reece James had so many chances to get goals, one-on-one chances that he missed. I mean, his score could have been absolutely massive, and unfortunately he did concede, and that Chelsea defense is looking slightly worried, but I do think against Wolves, that game has the potential for them to keep on. But this is basically wrap up the video, guys. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like if you did, and subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. Lots of uncertainty going around. Please comment your concerns down below. Any questions I try to answer. I try to get to everyone. So if you want to drop a question, I'll try to get to it tonight. Just keep the notifications on for when I reply, because I might do it quite late. But otherwise, I hope to see you guys in the deadline stream tomorrow, just depending on the kickoff time. Just check the deadline. I always stream pretty much 1 hour before the deadline, so I will adjust that however the deadline does go with these postponed fixtures. But I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.